Hello, and thank you for joining us again with the Indusoft Web Studio video training series. In this video, we're going to cover recipes. So, before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about just what recipes are and what we're going to cover in this video. We're going to cover the four different functions that you can use for recipes: saving, loading, deleting, and initializing. We're going to create a VB script to select from a list of available recipes. It's a very handy script to use, and it shows you some of the a little bit more of advanced techniques in VB script and how to pop open some browser windows to select that, and talk about the XML format saving of the recipes. Before we get into that, I'm going to switch back to the development environment. Here I've created a screen called Recipe Report with no space, just to make it a little bit more web compatible later on. I've done that by opening up our template screen and then doing a save as. I've then added navigation to a button that I've copied from above to get to that recipe report screen. Save that, and now what I'm going to do is open up the help system here and show you a bit about the recipes. So here under recipes, and a recipe worksheet we're going to create, and then we're going to put some objects on the screen to utilize that worksheet. And a recipe worksheet is used to load tag values from or save tag values to an external file during runtime. We can also delete and initialize, but the main two functions are loading and saving. And we can see that we can create this worksheet, and we're basically just going to put a file name at the top and then the tag names. And if there's arrays, we're going to use the number of elements. But in this case, we're creating a template by using this recipe worksheet. And then we can use the built-in scripting language to either load, save, delete, or initialize. And I'll come back to that in the help system in just a moment. Let me take a quick step back to the presentation. And here's what we're going to do first. We're going to create a recipe worksheet that I just showed. And essentially what we're going to do is put a name at the top, but then that will be the name of the recipe that we're going to either load or save or delete or initialize. But then we're going to put a list of tag names into that recipe worksheet. And that's really all that's in there, is the list of tag names. Then when we go to save this, we're going to choose the recipe name. In this case, we're going to put an object, a text object on the screen just to type that name in. And then we're going to execute the save function, and we're going to put that on a button. And once you do that save function, let's say we type in the name of some cookies we're going to make or something. It does not have to be food related. These can be parameters for a process, part numbers, set points. They don't have to be food related. They can be just about anything. Temperatures for a plastics injection molding machine, or just anything that you want. But then, so once we have that name, we're going to then save. And what it's going to do is reference that template using that name, and then it's going to save, let's say, sugar cookies. So it'll save those tag names once we've entered the values for those tag names using the recipe name sugar, and then save that off to the hard drive as sugar.dat. Let's say we change the name of the cookies, maybe we call it chocolate chip, and then hit the save. Then it'll save another file that references the original recipe template. It uses that format to have saved that out to the hard drive. Then let's say we change the name again. Maybe now we're going to make oatmeal cookies. It then references that worksheet and then saves a file called oatmeal.dat. Now all of these are under the save function. So what it's done is we've created the template previously in the development environment, and then using a name, we then save the tags associated with a recipe name. In this case, it's sugar cookies or chocolate chips or oatmeal. It could be a part number that you have or some process that you have. It doesn't, again, have to be food related. So again, this was the save function. So now let's take these three files that we have out on our hard drive, and how do we load those back in? So we have those three files, and then we're going to choose a recipe by name. And there's a couple of different ways we could do that. We could type it in. We just have to get that string into the file name tag name. So let's say we choose chocolate chip. So we choose chocolate chip, and that is the then recipe name. We then choose the load recipe function, which again I'll dive into the help system and show you in a minute. But then once we do that, it references that recipe worksheet and associates the name and the tag values that were saved previously. And then when you execute the load function, it then takes the values that were saved in that file and then writes those to the tags associated with that. Now here I only have 4 different values showed, but it can literally be hundreds or thousands. I don't know off the top of my head the limit, but it's a big one. Let's go back into the development environment, and here under the recipe report screen, actually we're already on there. I'm sorry, we're going to go under tasks, and the first thing we're going to do is create that template. So I'm going to right click here on recipes and insert. Now the description is just for documentation purposes only. We're going to call this recipe test, and we're going to give this a string that will hold the file name. So in this case, it's going to be inside of curly brackets, and we'll call it recipe name, no space, close curly brackets. Now this needs to be a string tag, and it'll prompt us for it because we're going to put the name of the recipe in there. And then we need some tags we're going to save things off of. Because we're making cookies, in this case we're going to use flour, and we're just going to store some integer values for these. So we'll do flour, sugar, what's the next one here? We'll do water, and oats. These will all be in pounds. We're making great big batches of cookies. So we'll do chocolate chips. And so there I have 5 different tags. And now what we need to do, let me explain a couple of other things in here. First of all, the register number. This is used for an old format, and we don't use this anymore, but we keep it around for legacy purposes. And if you happen to have arrays, we can put the number of elements that we want to use there. In this case, I'm just using just main tag names, so I'm just going to leave that as is. We're going to save this. I'm going to close this and save this. In this case, I'm going to save this as recipe 1. Now what that's done is that has saved, let me go back to that presentation here, back to that slide. What that has done is effectively saved this template here. So we've saved that off on the hard drive. Now let me pull open my file explorer here. And so under our project, which is under IWS 7.1 IWS training, we can see that here under the configuration folder, it has created recipe1.rcp. That's that template that it's going to reference, or that worksheet that it's going to reference. Move that off the screen. So that's this template. So now we have to go put some mechanisms on the screen to be able to enter the recipe name and the tags. So let's go do that. Let's go back to the screen, and here under graphics, and I'm going to stay on the left-hand side of the screen because on the right-hand side of the screen I'm going to eventually build reports in another video. So here we're going to put the recipe name, and I'll just put a bunch of pound signs in there so we can add sugar cookies and oatmeal and chocolate chip, whatever different types of cookies we're going to select. Now here I'm going to double-click on this and insert or apply a text data link animation to that. Again, I could have gone up here to the animations. This just makes it a little bit easier. And in here, I'm going to choose the recipe name string tag that we created a few moments ago. But let's see, that's a string tag, and we created recipe name. I'm going to select it so that I don't accidentally mistype it. Now, during runtime, we're going to actually type in a name in here. So we're going to want this to be input enabled. And when we first start out, those pound signs are going to be empty, or the tag is going to be empty, so we're not going to have really anything to click on there. To make it a little bit easier, let's go back to the text. What we'll do is select this and have a border on it. That'll make it a little bit easier, a bigger target if you have a touch screen or you can't see the text because you don't have any values in there yet. So just to make that a little bit easier, we could choose a background on it and make it stand out even more, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to keep it as is. The next thing that I'm going to do is give ourselves a way to put the different values into the different tag names associated with the flour, the sugar, the water, the oats, and the chocolate chips. So let's go do that. Very similar fashion to what I just did. So here I'm going to create flour, and we're going to put just 3 pound signs in, just so we don't go over 999. I'll apply a text data link animation on it, border on there as well. And here, again, I'm going to choose flour from my list, and we'll also do input enabled, and we'll start to set up here the minimum and the maximum values so we don't go out of range. Okay, now I can just copy this down, holding my control key, copy that down, and change this from flour. I'll delete that, go back in here. The next one that we had was sugar, and go back to the text and change that to sugar. And I don't have to close my object properties box. That's one of the nice things about IndieSoft Web Studio. We can keep that open and just kind of skim across the top. Unlike other competitive products, we don't have to keep closing that and reopening that and diving into and out of the objects. So the next one we had was water, and I need to change the text that's there as well as the tag name that it's tied to. So I'll go in here and browse, and down here to water, say OK. And let's see, we had a couple more here. We had oats, and just to make sure I grab the right tag there, oats, and back to the text. And last but not least, we need chocolate chips. So put in here choc chips, and the tag name is all one word without a space in it, chocolate chips. So there we have our mechanism to enter our tag values as well as our recipe name. Now we're going to need a way to load and save these recipes. The first thing that we do after we enter the recipe name and enter the tag values, we're going to execute the save function. So here I'm going to put a button, and here I'm going to put save. Now that is just the label on that button. We now need to put the functionality on there. So let's go take a look at the help functionality. So here under help, we're going to go to the built-in scripting language, and then we're going to go to module activity functions. And if we scroll down here, we will see, and these are in alphabetical order by the way, the recipe functionality. Now here we have save, load, delete, and initialize. And the format of this is the operation, colon, and then the sheet, which in this case will be the recipe 1 template that we've created. And we can put return values in here, and that'll show us the status. We've got something typed in wrong, or maybe there's some other error codes. I'll show you how to use this. And then we're going to put this type of layout here, or the syntax, I should say, with inside of quotes this format that's mentioned up here. So save recipe 1. Now we just happen to call our recipe 1, so I can actually copy this exact command out of the help system and put it on my button. So here on the button, I'm going to go back to graphics and apply the command animation. And instead of using VB script, I'm going to use the built-in scripting language here and paste that command right in here. So that's recipe, parenthesis, double quote, save, colon, recipe 1, close quote. There happens to be a space in there, but there doesn't need to be. And then close parenthesis. Now here we could put the status. In fact, I will do that. We'll call this status. And maybe I already have a status. We'll call it recipe status. And that does not exist. That'll be an integer. And I'll just go ahead and put that underneath the button here. And we'll apply the text data link and put the recipe status on there so we can see what's going on, give ourselves a little bit of feedback. We could be elaborate and build some messaging into that, and tells us more elaborate what's going on. We're then going to also need a load button, and the load button is very similar to the save button. In fact, really the only difference, instead of having save in here, we have load. Okay, so then we need to change the text on the button itself to load. So there's the basic functionality of the recipe. We're going to execute this now. Save this and run it. And once we get our screen up here, we'll go to the recipe report. Now the first thing we're going to do is let's create some sugar cookies. So we'll give it a name of sugar. So we're going to need some pounds of flour. I don't know, we'll put in 10 pounds of flour. And sugar cookies are going to need a lot of sugar, so we'll do half sugar. So we'll do 5 pounds of sugar, a little bit of water. We'll just do 1 cup of water. There's going to be no oats and no chocolate chips in the sugar cookies. We'll then save that. So we've now saved that, and if we go out to the File Explorer, we can see that we still have our recipe 1 template, but now if we go back up to our root folder, we now have sugar.dat. Now that's the recipe that we just stored for the sugar cookies. We're going to eventually bring some more in here. Let's do this. Now let's change this to chocolate chip. And we could put spaces in there, but in fact, let's go ahead and do that just to show we can do that. Let's do chocolate chip. And we're going to need a little bit less sugar, maybe 3 pounds of sugar, and no oats, but now we're going to put 3 pounds of chocolate chips in there. We'll save that. And now what we'll do is go back and change this to oatmeal. And we'll do a whole bunch of oatmeal. We'll put 5 pounds of oats and no chocolate chips in there, and we'll save that. So now what we've got, we go back to our File Explorer here. Now we have chocolatechip.dat, and we also have oatmeal.dat. So now we have those 3 different files, those different recipes stored on the hard drive. So now what we can do is, if we can take a look here, so we've got oatmeal has 5 pounds of oats and no chocolate chips. But if we go change this to chocolate chips and hit load, we can see that, did I type it in right? I have a status of 5. What does a status of 5 mean? Let's go back to the development environment and take a look at the command for module activity functions. And we'll take a look at the recipe. 5 means that there's some type of disk error. There's a chance that I can't have a space in there. Let me go use the other type of function there, or the other, we'll go back to sugar cookies. How's that? Go back to sugar and hit load. And okay, so now we've gotten sugar cookies back in there. Let's go back to oatmeal and hit load. So we have that, and chocolate chips. And we load, and we get a 5. Why? Here's another possible indication. I saved it as chalk chip, not chalk chips. So I need a way to prevent myself from mistyping this. So chalk chip, hit load. There we go. So now we get into chalk chip. It's not a space issue. It was just I forgot what I named it. So you might want to make a mechanism that makes it easier to select rather than having to type in. So how would you possibly go about doing that? Well, let's go do that and show you. What I'm going to do is go back into the screen, and I'm going to add a select button on the screen. So I'll grab a button here and place that down here, and we'll call this select. And we're going to put a command animation on here, but this time I'm going to use a VB script. Now I have a VB script that I've saved off screen. I'm just going to go copy it right now and paste it in here. And I'm going to explain this to you. You can pause this video at any time and go ahead and type in here. And if I remember to during the production, I'm going to zoom in on this so you can see it a little bit better. The RD file N with the $ in front of it opens up a browser window and allows you to select a file and does a little bit of filtering on this. In this case, it does the get app path that points it to where our application is, and it looks for only and filters out anything that's a star.dat. In this case, our recipes are saved as sugar.dat, chalkchip.dat, and oatmeal.dat. It then puts it into a tag name called temp. Now in this case, because it's using the read file n with the $sign in front of it, it's using the function, the built-in Intusoft script function, not a VB script, but it's using this tag name in quotes, and it does not have to have the $sign in front of it because it's referencing that as part of the function. That's not a VB script variable. That truly is an Intusoft Web Studio tag name. Anyway, so it puts when you pull open the browser using this command, and the user clicks on the file name, it puts that file name, including the path and the .dat, into that temp tag. This next line then takes that temp tag and then the path, which we have pointed to from the first line, and this is two sets of double quotes, or a null character, or an empty. And what it does is it replaces that entire path with nothing, and then puts it back into the temp tag here. And that's because, again, that's a tag. It needs a $sign in front of it. Didn't need it up here because it's part of that built-in function, but it does need it here because it's putting that result into there. Then it does something similar. It takes the file name that still has the .dat on the end of it, and it opens up that string tag called temp, and it takes and finds wherever .dat and replaces it again with an empty character or a null, and loads that into, or saves that into, recipe name. Then once we execute the load, just like we did on the button, it executes the load using the recipe name that we have stored here into the recipe name tag, using the recipe function. This does not have to be separated by spaces. I just did that to kind of break that out. So here's the selection process, and then here's the actual function that does the load. So let's see how this works. Oh, by the way, this 0 on here means that the user cannot get out of that particular folder, and I'll go back and change that and show you how that changes. So we're gonna I still have to create that tag called temp, and that needs to be a string. It's really important that that's a string. So let me go back in here, and if you haven't taken the time, go ahead and pause the video now, and then type this in, troubleshoot this, and come on back. Alright, you should be back now. Let's go ahead and run this and see how this works. We will save this and run. And now instead of typing in the name manually, we can go select, and it will present us only with the files that end in .dat. We can choose sugar, say OK, and now we don't have to accidentally mistype chocolate chip with an S on the end of it. So a little bit more back on that script and what that's doing here. Say OK, yes, go back into the recipe report. And something that I forgot to point out when we were in here before, this .dat is case sensitive. If you don't have that typed in like this, it will not work. This first one is not case sensitive, but this second one is. So when I first called this up, it didn't let me out of that browser window. If I put this to a 1, and you'll be able to look that up in the read file n function, then when we execute it, instead of being just that closed small little browser window, it pops open a full browser window and lets me navigate out of that. So in this case, if we want to kind of lock down the user and keep them within the confines of that particular folder, then we'll just change this to a 0. And when we run that, it has the smaller browser window. So let's give this another try here. So we get this smaller one. Okay, at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to jump back in the development system, and here under the recipe report, I'm going to make a copy of this save button down here, and what we'll do is change this to delete, and change the text on here to delete, and I'll copy this again and call this initialize, or INIT, and change the command to INIT. Now, because I'm not 100% sure, let me just go make sure that I use that right. That should be delete, and I don't remember if it's all spelled out, so let's just go take a look here. It is the word delete all spelled out, just want to make sure. So let's go back in and see how this works. Yes, and go ahead and run. And now what we should be able to do is, now that we have chocolate chips, chocolate chip, maybe I don't like the way that I've used that, or maybe I want to get rid of that, I can go ahead and hit delete. And now what we'll see back on our File Explorer is, even though sugar and oatmeal is still here, the chocolate chips have been deleted from the hard drive. Now another thing that we can do is, let's go select, and we'll take sugar, and maybe we want to reset all of these back to 0. I can just hit the init key, and that will have saved that all back to 0. And now when I load that back in, we can see that they're all zeros. Notice that init basically did not execute the load. It initialized the file on the hard drive, and I had to go call the or execute the load function for it to come back off the hard drive into the actual tag names. So that's a little bit about how that works. And one more quick thing, back here under the tasks, if we go under recipes and we save as XML, the file format that will save the recipes in will be XML format instead of the .dat format, so you can use that in more of a web-based application. So that's everything I wanted to show you today in recipes. Hopefully you learned something. If you would like to, please get a hold of us at info@indusoft.com. Have a great day. Thanks.